Dresden, nestled on the banks of the Elbe River, was once known as the Florence on the Elbe. This picturesque city, with its stunning architecture and rich cultural heritage, earned this nickname due to its striking resemblance to the Italian city of Florence. The Elbe River, winding gracefully through the city, added to its charm and allure, making it a beloved destination for travelers and artists alike. This nickname captured its beauty and cultural significance. Dresden was not just a city, it was a living, breathing masterpiece. Its streets were lined with Baroque and Rococo buildings, each telling a story of the city's glorious past. The cultural landmarks, from grand theatres to exquisite museums, stood as testaments to the city's dedication to the arts and humanities. For centuries, Dresden grew as a centre of art, architecture, and learning. The city attracted scholars, artists, and architects from all over Europe, each contributing to its ever-growing reputation. The art galleries were filled with masterpieces, and the architecture was a blend of various styles, reflecting the city's openness to new ideas and influences. Learning centres and universities flourished, making Dresden a hub of intellectual activity. Its rulers, the electors, and later kings of Saxony, filled the city with grand palaces, churches, and gardens. These rulers were patrons of the arts, commissioning works from the finest artists and architects of their time. The royal palaces, with their opulent interiors and meticulously designed gardens, were symbols of their power and wealth. The churches, with their soaring spires and intricate facades, were places of worship and community gathering. The Zwinger Palace, the Semper Opera House, and the Frauenkirche Church stood as testaments to Dresden's splendor. The Zwinger Palace, with its grand courtyards and galleries, was a center of art and culture. The Semper Opera House, renowned for its acoustics and architectural beauty, hosted performances that drew audiences from far and wide. The Frauenkirche Church, with its majestic dome, was a symbol of faith and resilience. Artists flocked to the city, drawn by its collections and its atmosphere. Dresden was a haven for painters, sculptors, and musicians who found inspiration in its beauty and tranquility. The city's art collections, housed in its many museums, were among the finest in Europe, featuring works by masters such as Raphael, Rembrandt, and Vermeer. The atmosphere of creativity and intellectual curiosity made Dresden a vibrant and dynamic place to live and work. Dresden was a jewel not just of Saxony, but of Germany and of Europe as a whole. Its cultural and artistic achievements were recognized and celebrated far beyond its borders. The city's influence extended to all corners of the continent, shaping the development of art, architecture, and learning. Dresden was a beacon of enlightenment and progress, a place where the past and the future coexisted in harmony. Before the outbreak of World War II, Dresden was a thriving city of over 600,000 people. Its streets were filled with the hustle and bustle of daily life as residents went about their business and visitors explored its many attractions. The city's population was diverse, with people from all walks of life contributing to its vibrant community. Dresden was a place of opportunity and promise, where dreams could be realized and ambitions fulfilled. It was a center for trade and industry, but it was perhaps best known for its cultural treasures. The markets were bustling with activity, offering a wide array of goods and services. The city's industries, from manufacturing to publishing, were thriving, providing employment and prosperity. But it was the cultural sites, the museums, theaters, and galleries that truly defined Dresden. These were the places where the city's soul was revealed, where its history and heritage were preserved and celebrated. The city's museums housed masterpieces of European art. The collections were vast and varied, featuring works from the Renaissance to the modern era. The museums were not just repositories of art, they were centers of learning and discovery, where visitors could explore the rich tapestry of European culture. The art collections were a source of pride for the city, attracting scholars and enthusiasts from around the world. Its libraries held priceless manuscripts. These libraries were treasure troves of knowledge, containing rare books, manuscripts, and documents that spanned centuries. The collections were meticulously curated and preserved, providing invaluable resources for researchers and historians. The libraries were places of quiet contemplation and study, where the past came alive through the written word. Dresden was a city where history, art, and culture intertwined, Every corner of the city had a story to tell, from the ancient ruins to the modern art installations. The historic sites were not just relics of the past, they were living, breathing parts of the city's identity. The art and culture of Dresden were woven into the fabric of everyday life, creating a unique and enriching experience for all who lived there or visited. It was a place of peace and learning, a far cry from the battlefields that would soon engulf Europe. The city was a sanctuary of tranquility where people could pursue their passions and interests without fear or conflict. The peaceful scenes of Dresden, with its serene parks and bustling cafes, stood in stark contrast to the turmoil that was about to unfold. The city was a beacon of hope and stability in a world that was rapidly descending into chaos. The people of Dresden, like many in Germany, faced hardship during the early years of the war. The war brought with it a host of challenges, from food shortages to economic instability. The residents of Dresden had to adapt to a new reality, one where resources were scarce and uncertainty was the norm. Despite these hardships, the spirit of the city remained unbroken as people came together to support one another and find ways to cope with the difficulties they faced. Rationing and shortages became commonplace. The war effort required sacrifices from everyone, and the people of Dresden were no exception. Ration lines became a familiar sight as residents queued for their allotted portions of food and other essentials. The shortages affected every aspect of daily life, from the availability of basic goods to the ability to maintain homes and businesses. Yet, through it all, the resilience and determination of the people shone through. Yet, life in Dresden continued, and the city remained largely untouched by the fighting that raged elsewhere. The war seemed distant, a far-off conflict that had not yet reached the city's doorstep. Daily life went on, with people finding ways to maintain a sense of normalcy amidst the uncertainty. The city's cultural institutions continued to operate, providing a much-needed escape from the harsh realities of war. Dresden remained a haven of peace and stability, even as the world around it was engulfed in conflict. Few could have imagined the devastation that awaited them in the final months of the war. The people of Dresden went about their lives, unaware of the impending danger that loomed on the horizon. The city, with its beautiful architecture and rich cultural heritage, seemed invincible, a place that would be spared the horrors of war. But fate had other plans, and the tranquility of Dresden was about to be shattered in the most unimaginable way. The beauty of Dresden, its art and its culture, would soon be consumed by the fires of war. The bombing of Dresden in February 1945 was one of the most devastating events of the war, reducing the city to rubble and ash. The flames engulfed everything in their path, destroying centuries of history and culture in a matter of hours. The once thriving city was left in ruins, its people devastated by the loss of their homes, their heritage, and their loved ones. The story of Dresden is a tragic one, a tale of a city caught in the maelstrom of a global conflict. The destruction was total, leaving nothing but memories and ruins in its wake. The aftermath of the bombing was a scene of utter devastation, with buildings reduced to rubble and streets filled with debris. The people of Dresden were left to pick up the pieces, mourning the loss of their city and grappling with the enormity of the tragedy that had befallen them. It is a story of destruction and loss, but also of resilience and rebuilding. The people of Dresden, despite the overwhelming odds, found the strength to rebuild their city from the ashes. The process of reconstruction was long and arduous, but it was driven by a deep sense of hope and determination. The city's cultural heritage was painstakingly restored, and new buildings rose from the ruins, symbolizing the resilience and spirit of its people. It is a story that continues to resonate today, reminding us of the human cost of war and the importance of peace. The memorials and monuments that dot the city serve as poignant reminders of the past, honoring the memory of those who perished and celebrating the resilience of those who survived. Dresden's story is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable tragedy, hope and renewal are always possible. By 1945, World War II had been raging for nearly 6 years. The conflict had engulfed the entire continent, leaving a trail of devastation and despair in its wake. From the beaches of Normandy to the streets of Stalingrad, the war had touched every corner of Europe, altering the lives of millions forever. Germany, under the Nazi regime, had unleashed a wave of destruction across Europe. The blitzkrieg tactics employed by the German military had initially brought swift victories, but at a tremendous cost. Cities were reduced to rubble, and the civilian population bore the brunt of the suffering. The Nazi ideology of conquest and domination left a scar on the continent that would take generations to heal. Millions had perished in the conflict, and the continent lay in ruins. The human cost of the war was staggering, with entire families wiped out and communities destroyed. The scale of the destruction was unprecedented, with historic cities and cultural landmarks reduced to ashes. The war had not only claimed lives, but had also shattered the very fabric of European society. The tide of war, however, was turning. The Allied forces, through sheer determination and strategic brilliance, were beginning to push back the Axis powers. The combined might of the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union was proving to be an unstoppable force. The liberation of occupied territories brought hope to millions who had endured years of oppression and hardship. The Allied forces, led by the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union, were advancing on Germany from both the West and the East. The coordination between these powerful nations was a testament to their shared resolve to defeat the Nazi regime. The leaders of the Allied nations, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, held numerous meetings to plan their strategies and ensure a united front against the common enemy. Germany's military situation was becoming increasingly desperate. The once formidable Wehrmacht was now a shadow of its former self, with depleted ranks and dwindling resources. The relentless advance of the Allied forces left the German military with little room to maneuver, and the losses on both the eastern and western fronts were mounting. Its armies were depleted, its resources dwindling. The German war machine, which had once seemed invincible, was now struggling to sustain itself. Factories lay in ruins and the supply lines were stretched thin. The morale of the German soldiers was at an all-time low, as they faced the grim reality of a war that could no longer be won. The Nazi leadership, however, remained defiant, urging the German people to fight on to the bitter end. Propaganda was used to instill a sense of duty and nationalism, with Hitler and his inner circle making impassioned speeches to rally the populace. Despite the dire situation, the regime refused to surrender, clinging to the hope of a miraculous turnaround. In the skies above Germany, Allied bombers rained down destruction on German cities and industrial centers. The air war was a critical component of the Allied strategy, aimed at crippling Germany's ability to continue the fight. Night after night, the bombers took to the skies, delivering their deadly payloads with devastating precision. The air war, a brutal and relentless campaign, aimed to cripple Germany's ability to wage war. Factories, railways, and other key infrastructure were targeted in an effort to disrupt the German war effort. The destruction from the air raids was immense, leaving cities in ruins and the civilian population in a state of constant fear. Dresden, despite its cultural significance, was not immune from the air war. Known for its stunning architecture and rich cultural heritage, the city was a symbol of German art and history. However, its strategic importance made it a target for the Allied bombers, who saw it as a key node in the German war machine. The city held strategic importance. Located in the heart of Germany, Dresden was a vital transportation hub, with rail lines connecting Berlin and other major cities to the Eastern Front. Its infrastructure played a crucial role in the movement of troops and supplies, making it a prime target for the Allied forces. It was a major transportation hub, with rail lines connecting Berlin and other German cities to the Eastern Front. The rail network in Dresden was essential for the logistics of the German military, facilitating the rapid deployment of forces and the transport of war materials. Disrupting this network was a key objective for the Allies. Factories in and around Dresden produced goods vital to the German war effort. The city's industrial capacity was significant, with numerous factories churning out weapons, ammunition, and other essential supplies. The workforce in Dresden was dedicated to supporting the war, working long hours under difficult conditions to meet the demands of the military. As the war progressed, Dresden also became a refuge for Germans fleeing the advancing Soviet armies. The city saw an influx of refugees, adding to the already strained resources and creating a humanitarian crisis. The streets of Dresden were crowded with people seeking safety, their lives uprooted by the relentless advance of the Red Army. The stage was set for a tragedy. The convergence of military necessity, political calculations, and the brutal realities of total war would culminate in the destruction of Dresden. The decisions made in the war rooms of the Allied command would have far-reaching consequences, leading to one of the most controversial episodes of the conflict. The convergence of military necessity, political calculations, and the brutal realities of total war would culminate in the destruction of Dresden. On the night of February 13, 1945, waves of Allied bombers descended upon the city, unleashing a firestorm that would engulf Dresden in flames. The intensity of the bombing was such that it created a firestorm, with temperatures reaching over 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The city, once a symbol of German culture and refinement, would become a symbol of the horrors of war. The aftermath of the bombing revealed the true extent of the devastation, with entire neighborhoods reduced to ashes and countless lives lost. Dresden's cultural landmarks, which had stood for centuries, were now nothing more than charred ruins. The destruction of Dresden remains a poignant reminder of the destructive power of war and the human cost of conflict.